kind people are the ones you should fear the most. Not the loud ones. Not the ones who threaten you. Not the ones who show their teeth every time they speak. Those people are predictable. They leak their poison early. You see them coming. You prepare. But the kind ones, they are silent. They absorb. They endure. And endurance is where monsters are born. You mistake their softness for weakness. That's your first error. You see patience and think it means incapability. You see forgiveness and assume there is no memory. You see calm and think there is no storm. You are wrong. Kind people don't lack darkness, they control it. Every day, every conversation, every insult they let slide, every betrayal they swallow. Every night they go to sleep replaying words they never said. They are not empty of rage. They are full of it, compressed, pressurized, contained behind discipline. And pressure, when contained long enough, does not disappear. It explodes. A cruel person hurts others because it is their nature. There is no depth to it. No philosophy. No code. Just impulse. Just appetite. Just noise. But when a kind person finally decides to hurt you, it is not impulse. It is a decision. That's the difference. And that difference is terrifying. A kind mind studies pain. They know exactly what it feels like to be ignored, to be replaced, to be lied to be used like a stepping stone and then discarded like trash. They know the texture of betrayal, the temperature of loneliness, the sound of silence when you needed someone and nobody came. They don't read about suffering, they've lived in it. So when they finally turn cold, they don't swing wildly. They don't scream, they don't throw childish tantrums. No, they become quiet in a different way. Strategic, their empathy, the same empathy you abused, becomes a weapon. They understand people too well. They see motives before words are spoken. They notice the flicker in your eyes when you lie. They hear the hesitation in your voice when you fake concern. They map your weaknesses without you ever realizing you're being studied, because they've spent their whole life studying themselves, controlling themselves, restraining themselves. Restraint builds power. Every time they chose not to react, they were training. Every time they stayed silent instead of exploding, they were sharpening something inside you never saw. Every time they forgave when they shouldn't have, they were learning the limits of their own tolerance. And once that limit is crossed, there is no confusion. There is clarity. You think the dangerous person is the one who has nothing to lose. No, that person is reckless, sloppy, emotional, easy to predict. The real danger is the one who had everything to lose and watched you take it piece by piece. Their trust, their loyalty, their time, their love, their effort, their belief in you. You didn't just hurt them. You dismantled something they carefully built. And they felt every crack. Do you know what happens to someone who has already survived their worst fear? They stop being afraid. Kind people spend years being afraid of one thing becoming the villain, becoming cruel, becoming the thing that hurt them. So they endure. They bend. They compromise their own needs. They tell themselves, be patient, be understanding, don't become bitter. But there comes a moment a final moment, a line. And when that line is crossed, the fear of becoming the villain dies. And that's when the real shift happens. Because now, they are no longer protecting the world from their darkness. They are protecting themselves. That's when kindness turns into calculation. Compassion turns into cold observation. Silence turns into strategy. You will notice the change, but too late. They will stop explaining themselves. Stop arguing. Stop begging to be understood. Stop giving you the emotional reactions you fed on. They go still. And stillness is not surrender. It is aim. You will think they've given up, that they are broken, that you've won. No, they are done wasting energy on you. All that energy now goes somewhere else, into building, into planning, into self-control that feels almost inhuman. Kind people, when pushed too far, don't destroy themselves. They rebuild into something unrecognizable. You see, they know how to suffer in silence. They've been doing it for years. So when they decide to detach, they don't fall apart publicly. They don't post about it. They don't beg for sympathy. They vanish emotionally while standing right in front of you. That's when you lose them, not when they cry, not when they fight, not when they plead. You lose them when they become calm, because now, your words no longer matter. Your opinions no longer penetrate. Your presence no longer shakes them. People, you have lost influence, and influence is power. A kind person's final is not rage. It is indifference. And indifference from someone who once loved deeply is colder than hate. Hate still cares. Hate still reacts. Hate still ties you together. Indifference cuts the cord. You become irrelevant. And the person you thought you controlled, manipulated, or overshadowed becomes a ghost to you, while they become solid to themselves for the first time. That's the transformation nobody talks about. Pain forces reflection. Reflection builds awareness. Awareness builds control, and control builds power. The kind mind has replayed every conversation 1,000 times, every mistake, every red flag they ignored, every moment they betrayed themselves to keep peace. They dissect their own weakness brutally. They don't blame the world forever. At some point they turn inward and say, never again. And when a kind person says, never again, it is not a phrase, it is a law. They start setting boundaries without emotion, cutting people off without speeches, walking away without dramatic exits. You won't even get closure. You'll get silence. Because closure is a gift. And they are done giving gifts to those who drain them. This is where the danger acknowledged begins. A person who has mastered their own emotions is no longer easy to control. Guilt doesn't work. Shame doesn't work. Threats don't work. Emotional games don't work. They've seen it all, felt it all. These civilized people survived it all. You can't scare someone who already faced their worst loneliness and lived through it. You can't manipulate someone who has already confronted their own flaws and accepted them. You can't break someone who rebuilt themselves alone in the dark. That's why kind minds, once pushed too far, are not just strong, they are unstoppable, because their power is not loud. It is disciplined, focused, and patient power always outlasts loud aggression. They don't seek revenge in chaos. They seek it in growth, in distance, in success, in becoming so far beyond you that your memory shrinks into something small and embarrassing. Their revenge is evolution, and evolution is permanent. They don't announce this evolution. That's what makes it lethal. While others broadcast their pain, the kind mind goes underground. Quiet upgrades, silent rebuilds, no applause, no witnesses. Just discipline forged in isolation. You think they're doing fine. You think time softened them. Time didn't soften them, it sharpened them. Every lonely night became a lesson. Every betrayal became data. Every tear became fuel. They studied their own collapse like a scientist studies a failed experiment. No denial, no excuses, just brutal honesty. Where did I ignore my instincts? Why did I tolerate disrespect? Why did I beg to be chosen? These questions hurt more than what you did, because now they're not just seeing your betrayal, they're seeing their own self-betrayal. And that realization changes everything, because once a kind person stops betraying themselves, nobody else gets the privilege either. This is where their psychology shifts from emotional survival to mental dominance. Before, they wanted peace. Now they want control, not over others, over themselves, over their reactions, over their environment, over who gets access. Access becomes sacred. You don't get their time easily. You don't get their trust cheaply. You don't get their vulnerability just because you ask. Every door now has a lock, and most people don't have the key. They are no longer driven by the need to be liked. That need died in the moment they realized being liked didn't protect them from being used. So they stop performing kindness. They become intentional. Kindness is no longer automatic. It's selective, measured, observed. If you disrespect them once, they don't argue. They adjust your position in their life, quietly, permanently, no speeches, no warnings, just consequences, and the scariest part, they don't hate you. They simply downgrade you. Emotionally, you go from important to irrelevant in a single decision. That's a level of emotional control most people never reach, because hate is heavy. Hate ties you to the past. Hate keeps wounds open. They don't want wounds anymore. They want efficiency. You become a lesson, not a memory. While you're still thinking about what happened, they're already 10 steps ahead in life. New skills, new discipline, new boundaries, new mindset. Pain turned into structure. They wake up earlier. They train their body. They train their mind. They watch their thoughts. They catch emotional impulses before they speak. They become dangerous in the most invisible way possible. Self-mastery. You can't provoke them like before. The insults don't land. The guilt doesn't stick. The emotional hooks slide off. It's like trying to grab smoke, because they've already faced the worst pain internally. External pressure doesn't compare anymore. And when someone no longer reacts, manipulators panic. They try harder, push more buttons, bring up the past, create drama, spread stories, anything to get a reaction, because a reaction means control still exists. But the kind mind, now hardened, sees the pattern instantly, and they smile, not a warm smile, a knowing one. because now they see what they didn't before, how small the game really was, how obvious the manipulation always was, how they once overestimated people who never deserved that power. Clarity is a brutal gift. It makes you outgrow entire versions of your life. They start noticing how many relationships were built on their tolerance, not respect. How many people stayed only because they could take, not give. How often their silence was interpreted as weakness instead of mercy. Mercy, that's the word. They were merciful before, patient beyond reason, understanding beyond fairness. But mercy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Now mercy has rules, and most people don't qualify. This is where loneliness returns. But this time, it feels different. It's not abandonment, it's selection. They choose solitude over contamination, peace over performance, discipline over distraction. They get comfortable being alone without feeling empty. That's power. Because when someone is comfortable alone, they cannot be controlled by the fear of losing company. You can't threaten to leave. You can't scare them with silence. You can't dangle attention like a reward. They've already survived without you. So your leverage is gone. This is the psychological turning point most people never reach. The point where external validation stops being oxygen. They breathe internally now. Self-respect replaces approval. Standards replace emotions. They don't trust words anymore. Well, they trust patterns, consistency, behavior under pressure, how you act when things don't benefit you. They observe more than they speak, and observation is power. You never know how much they see, how much they understand, how deeply they read people now. The same empathy that once made them forgiving now makes them precise. They don't give second chances based on promises, only proof. And proof takes time, effort, discipline. Most people fail that test. That's why their circle gets smaller, while their presence gets stronger. Fewer people, deeper loyalty, less noise, more focus. The kind mind no longer wants to be everyone's safe place. They become their own fortress. Fortresses don't chase. They don't convince outsiders to enter. They stand firm. If you belong to these civilized people, you're allowed in. If you don't, the gates stay closed without apology. And here's the truth people can't accept. They created this version of the kind person. Every lie, well, every broken promise, every time you made them feel small, every time you ignored their pain, every time you chose convenience over loyalty, you were shaping something. You thought you were getting away with it. No. You were building someone who would never let it happen again. Pain is a sculptor, and kind people endure enough pain to become statues of discipline. Cold on the outside, unbreakable inside. They don't need revenge in the dramatic sense. No shouting, no destruction, no chaos. Their revenge is psychological distance. You lose access to the version of them that loved you without armor, that believed your words, that saw the best in you. That version is gone, and it's never coming back. You don't get to hurt someone into wisdom and then expect to meet them as they were. Growth changes people, especially growth forced by betrayal. And this is where the final transformation happens. Not into a villain, not into a monster, into something far more dangerous. A person no longer negotiates with disrespect. A person who no longer bleeds for people who would watch them drown. A person who understands power is not loud, it is controlled. The kind mind, after being pushed past its limits, stops chasing emotional highs. No more drama. No more chaos disguised as passion. No more confusing intensity with love. They choose stability, structure, both silence, and silence is where real strength grows. They stop talking about what they're going to do. They just do it. Goals become private. Moves become quiet. Progress becomes personal. They build in the dark. While others are distracted by noise, they are stacking discipline. One habit at a time, one boundary at a time, one refusal at a time. No becomes their most powerful word. And they say it without guilt. Do you understand how rare that is? A kind person who can say no and sleep peacefully at night is someone who has conquered themselves. They no longer need to explain why something hurts them. They no longer need others to agree with their boundaries. Their peace is reason enough. This is ultimate power, emotional independence. You cannot control someone who does not need your approval. People, you cannot manipulate someone who is not afraid of your absence. You cannot intimidate someone who has already survived emotional starvation. They've lived without support, without understanding, without comfort, and they're still standing. That realization hardens them in a way success alone never could. Because success without suffering creates arrogance. But strength born from suffering creates precision. They move carefully now. They choose people carefully. They trust slowly. They love with awareness, not blindness. And if you cross them now, there is no explosion. There is removal. You simply disappear from their life like you never existed. No warning, no fight, no final speech. Just distance so complete it feels like death. Because they finally understand something most people never learn. Access to them is a privilege, not a right. Before, they gave their time freely, their energy freely, their loyalty freely. Now, everything is earned. And what's earned is respected. They don't seek revenge through destruction. They seek it through elevation. They level up so hard that the people who hurt them can't even recognize them anymore. New mindset, new standards, new circle, new life, and the past, it becomes small. The people who once made them cry become stories they tell without emotion. Lessons, not wounds. Footnotes, not chapters. That's real revenge. Not making someone suffer, making them irrelevant. Because nothing hurts the ego more than being forgotten by someone you thought you had power over. And here's the final truth. Kindness was never weakness. It was restraint. And restraint, once released and redirected towards self-respect, becomes unstoppable force. They are still kind, these civilized people, but now kindness is paired with boundaries sharp enough to cut through manipulation. Compassion paired with standards, empathy paired with discernment. They don't hate the world. Oh, they understand it. They see how pain shapes people, how fear drives betrayal, how insecurity creates cruelty, and instead of becoming bitter, they become selective energy, selective trust, selective effort. They don't try to save everyone anymore. They save themselves, and In doing that, they become a quiet example of power most people never reach. A person who has faced abandonment and didn't abandon themselves. A person who was betrayed and didn't betray their own growth. A person who felt alone and built a life where solitude feels like peace, not punishment. That is the final form: calm, focused, detached from chaos, immune to emotional games, driven by purpose, not validation. They don't need to prove they're strong. Their life proves it. So when you see a kind person who has gone quiet, who no longer reacts, who no longer explains, who no longer chases, understand this: you didn't break them, you trained them, and now they've graduated from pain into power. Remember this always: the loud ones burn fast, but the kind ones, once pushed too far, become fire that never goes out.